Hey everyone, today's a little different. For those of you unaware, Duet Night Abyss, Pan Studios and Hero Games' foray into the live service action RPG game genre, is dropping at the end of October 28th to be exact. The game started making waves when the developers announced following their second closed beta test that the game was going to be removing all of their character banners as well as their stamina system, essentially transitioning from a gacha game over to a game fueled entirely by cosmetics. Lately, I've heard rumors that those cosmetics might even be in a gacha banner themselves, but for the moment that's just an unconfirmed rumor. Sure would be interesting though, wouldn't it? After all, they would be far from the first and only game to move cosmetics onto a banner. Blue Protocol Star Resonance currently has cosmetic banners, and we know for a fact that Anata will too. But I digress. Today isn't about the monetization structure of DNA, it's about the characters. Let's get into it. A game, particularly a gacha game or an ARPG, is really only as good as its characters. Time and again, we've seen subpar stories carried by characters simply from good playstyle, character design, and weapon design. From what I've been able to gather through my research, the game has over 500 weapons available falling into one of 12 classes, 6 melee and 6 ranged weapon types, all of which are freely accessible on every character. That having been said, characters are said to have a specific weapon type that works better on them and plays into their character abilities either through passives or in active play. Today, I'm going to give you all the information I have on every character that was included in CBT2, so you can start planning out who to aim for when launch comes around in a few short weeks. Character kits in Duet Night Abyss can be broken down into skills, passives, weapon proficiency, attribute type, elemental damage, and character elements. To further break into the elemental damage a little bit, my understanding is that there are 6 elemental damage types: Animo, Electro, Hydro, Pyro, Umbro, and Lumino. There are also 5 different types of skills: damage, buff, summon, defense, and healing. Don't ask me how they classify these either, because honestly, I don't understand how Truffle and Filbert isn't a summon type ultimate. Or Zeliu, considering she pulls a Casterus and summons a frickin' dragon, but hey, here we are. It's worth mentioning too, if you're used to a game like Warframe, as I assume this game may appeal to Warframe players somewhat, you'll find that there aren't as many abilities here as in that game. Each character has a total of 2 abilities, 1 skill, 1 ultimate, and 3 passives. They also have access to Genimon summons as well, so technically speaking, if you count the Genimon ability, they have a total of 3 in their kits. Any footage that I show here will typically have these displayed in the right hand side of the screen as E for skill, Q for ultimate, and Z for Genimon. The last thing to note is that you can use any weapon on any character. However, each character has an affinity for specific weapon combinations referred to as their weapon proficiency. So when I bring up weapon proficiency in the breakdowns, just know it's not locked to just those weapon types. Lastly, as I obviously wasn't in the CBT2, it should go without saying that this gameplay footage isn't mine. And since I'm using other creators' footage, I'm also crediting and linking them down in the description. If you want a better look at these kits or the video sources I'm pulling all of this from, please feel free to check their videos out and support the original creators. Without their contributions, I couldn't have made this video. One final note to make before we actually start diving in here is that you're going to hear a common term come up, particularly sanity. Just so you're aware, sanity is the game's skill point system or SP system, so if you hear sanity come up, it's just a reference to the SP system. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with Barnica's kit. She's an Umbro DPS character whose weapon proficiency is swords and dual pistols. Her 3 passives are Recuperation, Afterburn, and Heart Devourer. Recuperation states that when dealing damage with Faint Light or a sword, there's a chance to restore sanity for Barnica. Her second passive is Afterburn, which states that after using Nether Flames, the next use of Faint Light will not consume sanity. Lastly is Heart Devourer, which increases attack for the character and their nearby Umbro teammates when she's deployed as a combat partner. Barnica has a damage skill and a buff type ultimate. Her skill is the damage type Fairlight, which after casting, Barnica dashes forward, dealing AoE damage 4 times along the way. Her ultimate is the buff type Nether Flames. Nether Flames switches her melee weapon to Ymir and casts 1 sword wave. When performing a normal attack using Ymir, it unleashes sword waves in the attacking direction and constantly consumes sanity, making her immune to hit stun when taking damage. Once her sanity drops to 0 or the skill is used again, she'll sheath Ymir and return to normal. Outsider is an animo DPS character with a weapon proficiency for dual blades and dual pistols. His passives are Fang for Fang, Ravenous Gnaw, and Air Dominance. Fang for Fang states that when taking damage, Outsider generates 1 Fang Spike to attack the damage dealer. The effect can only be triggered once per second. When generated, a Fang Spike flies towards its target, dealing animo damage to all enemies along the path and inflicting throat cutter on them. After flying for a period of time, the Fang Spike falls and remains on the ground. A maximum of 10 Fang Spikes can exist at the same time. The throat cutter effect increases the enemy's damage taken from Outsider. Ravenous Gnaw states that when Outsider is not in Relentless Hunt, there is a chance to generate 1 Fang Spike to attack the target while dealing damage with a melee weapon. This effect can only be triggered once per second. Air Dominance is his combat partner's skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as any of their nearby animo allies. His skill is the buff type Stealthy Prowl, wherein Outsider enters the stealth state and exits Relentless Hunt state. He generates 2 Fang Spikes to attack nearby enemies when exiting stealth state or using Stealthy Prowl again in stealth state. When in stealth state, he cannot be detected by enemies, and taking damage will not exit stealth. Launching an attack or using Predator's Pounce will exit stealth state. His ultimate is Predator's Pounce, which is a buff type ultimate. Upon cast, Outsider retracts all Fang Spikes and enters into Relentless Hunt state. For each Fang Spike retracted, Outsider loses HP, which is then converted into an equal amount of Ultra Shield, and the duration of Relentless Hunt is extended. When losing HP due to the effect, HP will not drop below 1. When in Relentless Hunt state, Outsider is immune to hit stun and gains weapon attack speed boost and malaise boost. He also cannot receive any healing for the duration of the state, and any healing given is converted into Ultra Shield instead. Truffle and Filbert are animo support heroes whose weapon proficiency is with polearms and bow. Her passives are Chop Chop Commissaries, Combat Supply, and Peep and Peck. Chop Chop Commissaries makes Truffle gain 1 stack of heavyweight for every second Truffle keeps moving up to 10 stacks. Heavyweights increase damage dealt and decreases damage taken. Combat Supply states when dealing skill damage, there's a chance to drop 1 ammo supply chest. Peep and Peck is her combat partner skill, and it increases the malaise of the character as well as their nearby allies when 2 or more characters in the team share the same element type. Her skill is a damage skill called Trotter's Trot Trot, which commands Filbert to charge forward, dealing animo damage to enemies in the path. Upon hitting any obstacle, it deals AoE animo damage at its endpoint. When this skill is used, it heals Truffle and Filbert as well as their nearby allies and increases their damage. When Truffle rides on Filbert, the skill is replaced with Trotter's Charge Charge. Trotter's Charge Charge states that long pressing the button performs a sustained charge, continuously consuming sanity and dealing animo damage to enemies in the path. Upon hitting any obstacles, Filbert stops, dealing AoE animo damage at the endpoint. Her ultimate is Tummy Full, Hands Full. Truffle rides on Filbert and gains 100 points of passion for work and a movement speed boost, dealing animo damage to enemies on the path while moving. When riding, Truffle is unable to use any weapons but can command Filbert to attack. When the ultimate is triggered again, Truffle dismounts and triggers Trotter's Trot Trot 1 time. Passion for Work loses 5 points per second and restores 1 when dealing damage upon knocking into a target. During Trotter's Charge, Passion for Work will not lose. When all points drop to 0, Truffle dismounts and unleashes Trotter's Trot Trot 1 time. Rebecca is a Hydro DPS with weapon proficiency in polearms and grenade launchers. Her passives are True Love Trial, Lovesick Synergy, and 7-Day Spread. True Love Trial states that when dealing damage with a melee weapon or Rulio Rita's attack, it inflicts 1 stack of Poison of Love on the target up to 6 stacks. Poison of Love deals hydro damage once every 2 seconds. When defeated, enemies inflicted with Poison of Love transfer their Poison of Love to nearby enemies based on the current stack count and the remaining duration. Lovesick Synergy states that when dealing damage with a normal attack using a melee weapon, there's a chance to have Poison of Love inflicted on the target cause additional damage one time. Dealing damage with Lotta Love Dew will always trigger this effect. 7-Day Spread is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby Hydro allies. Her skill is a summon type skill called Aurelian Caress. When cast, it summons one Aurelia Aurora, allowing a Rebecca to summon up to 3 of them at a time. They inherit 100% of Rebecca's stats and continuously deal hydro damage to nearby enemies. Her ultimate is the damage type Lotta Love Dew, which deals hydro damage to nearby enemies with the damage being increased based on the number of Poison of Love stacks inflicted on the target. Tabitha is a hydro support character with a weapon proficiency of sword and bow. Her passives are Have Tricks Will Travel, Tentacles Abound, and Edge. Have Tricks Will Travel states, dealing crit damage with a ranged weapon has a chance to summon 1 tentacle. A maximum of 18 tentacles can exist at any given time. Tentacles inherit 100% of Tabitha's stats, continuously dealing hydro damage and capturing up to 2 enemies, immobilizing them. Tentacles Abound states, when summoning tentacles, she gains 1 stack that increases her crit chance up to 10 stacks. Edge is her combat partner skill, and it increases the skill damage of the character as well as their nearby allies. Her skill is the buff type Tabitha's Specialty. Tabitha's Specialty commands all tentacles to attack 1 time and increases the damage dealt from this attack. It also grants Tabitha and her nearby allies the ability to deal additional hydro damage. Her ultimate is the summon type Brawl for Justice. Brawl for Justice summons 9 tentacles to the field around Tabitha. The summoned tentacles inherit 100% of Tabitha's stats, continuously dealing hydro damage to nearby enemies and capturing up to 2 enemies to immobilize them. Fushu is a Hydro support character whose weapon proficiency is in Whip Sword and Bow. Her passives are Arceus Revival, Brim of Vitality, and Meridian Synergy. Arceus Revival states that when Fushu or her nearby allies use either a combat skill or ultimate skill, they'll gain 1 stack of skill speed up to 10 stacks. The remaining time of the effect is also refreshed with every newly added stack. Brim of Vitality states that Fushu's skill damage is increased based on the number of Yunchi on the field. Meridian Synergy is her combat partner deployment passive, and it states that it increases skill damage of the character and their nearby teammates when 2 or more members of the team share the same element type. Her skill is a summon type skill called Subcelestial Solace, which states that it summons 1 Yunchi to the field, with a maximum availability of 2 being summonable. The summon inherits 100% of Fushu's stats and deals hydro damage to the nearest 5 enemies once every second. They also restore HP and sanity for nearby teammates every 3 seconds. Her ultimate is a buff type ultimate called Holistic Harmony, which deals hydro damage to nearby enemies. It also grants Fushu an Ultra Shield and increases her attack speed. In addition, nearby teammates also gain Ultra Shield and 9 Needle Therapy, which increases their skill damage by a percentage of Fushu's skill damage. Cibil is an Electro DPS character with weapon proficiency in whip swords and pistols. Her passives are Might of Thunder, Master of Storm Clouds, and Divine Retribution. Might of Thunder states that when the damage dealt triggers bonus effect, Cibil gains certain points of Might of Thunder up to 300 points. Divine Conqueror and Stormcaller can be empowered by consuming Might of Thunder points. Master of Storm Clouds states that the damage dealt by Divine Conqueror and Legion's Punishment has a chance to trigger bonus effect based on Cibil's melee weapon trigger probability. Divine Retribution is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby Electro allies. Her skill is the damage type Divine Conqueror, which deals electro damage to enemies within range in front and creates a field of Legion's Punishment at the location. Legion's Punishment is a field that's created after a 1.5 second delay that consumes a certain amount of Might of Thunder every 0.4 seconds to deal electro damage to one random enemy within range lasting up to 10 seconds. When Might of Thunder drops to 8, the Legion's Punishment field dissipates. A maximum of 5 Legion's Punishment fields can be deployed at any given time. Her ultimate is the summon type Stormcaller, which summons a Chaotic Thunder Orb. Only one of these can exist at a time. The ultimate also consumes Might of Thunder to summon an enhanced Chaotic Thunder Orb. The interval for Chaotic Thunder Orb to trigger Devastating Storm is reduced to 2 seconds, and its link damage is increased. The Chaotic Thunder Orb inherits a certain percentage of Cibil's max HP with 0 defense and is considered an enemy unit. Once summoned, it calls forth a devastating storm once every 3 seconds and links to the furthest 5 enemies within range. It links 1 more enemy per second up to 10 enemies total, dealing electro damage to all the linked targets once per second. When the Chaotic Thunder Orb takes damage, it then transfers the damage taken to the linked targets at a certain percentage. Devastating Storm deals electro damage to nearby enemies. Lynn is a pyro DPS character with weapon proficiency with great swords and dual pistols. She also has an excellent character trailer. You should totally go watch it. Her passives are Tactile Rapid Fire, The Unforgivable, and Hellforge. Tactile Rapid Fire states that when not shooting, Lynn gains 1 stack of preload per second up to 6 stacks. When shooting, it consumes all stacks, granting her Suppressing Fire for a period of time. Suppressing Fire increases Lynn's damage based on the number of preload stacks consumed. You also cannot gain preload stacks during Suppressing Fire. The Unforgivable states that once Lacerated Wound Count reaches its maximum application, Laceration is immediately removed and deals damage instantly. Hellforge is Lynn's combat partner passive and increases attack for the character and their pyro teammates. Her skill is Deadly Blossom, which deals pyro damage to enemies in front of Lynn and inflicts them with Laceration. Laceration stacks every time an enemy takes ranged weapon damage until the laceration duration ends, at which point the enemy is dealt pyro damage equal to the lacerated wound count times the laceration damage to the enemy once. Her ultimate is the buff type Gunpowder Revelry, which switches her ranged weapon to Hansel and Gretel. While in her ultimate, Lynn can shoot and use skills but cannot move. Shooting deals damage to all enemies in front of Lynn, which grants her stacks that increase Lynn's attack speed by 0.2 seconds up to 35 stacks. Using Hansel and Gretel continuously consumes sanity, during which Lynn is immune to hit stun when taking damage. The ultimate ends when Lynn's sanity runs out or her ultimate is triggered again. Rhythm is an electro DPS character with a weapon proficiency in katanas and assault rifles. Her passives are Tactical Preservation, Power Off Anxiety, and Thundering Nightbreaker. Tactical Preservation states that when sanity is consumed, a portion of it is converted into electric energy. The upper limit of electric energy is equal to Rhythm's max sanity. Power Off Anxiety states that when she consumes electric energy, 50% of the consumed electric energy is converted into sanity. Thundering Nightbreaker is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby electro allies. Her skill is the damage type skill Volt Rush. When triggering Volt Rush, Rhythm leaps forward, dealing electro damage to enemies along her path. When the electric energy point is no less than 30, it consumes 30 points to increase the leap speed and Volt Rush's damage and grants an effect that increases the damage dealt by Rhythm. Her ultimate is the buff type Electro Vortex. Electro Vortex deals electro damage to enemies within range and puts Rhythm into the Electro Surge state, during which sanity is continuously consumed. When sanity drops to 0 or the ability is triggered again, Electro Surge state ends. Electro Surge increases movement speed for Rhythm and her nearby teammates and deals electro damage to 1 random enemy within range per second, and alternatively inflicts positive charge and negative charge on them. This will also prioritize enemies without electric charge. Electric charge has a target with a positive charge randomly select a target with a negative charge within range and pulls them both towards the midpoint between their positions, dealing electro damage to both of them. If no negative targets are around, it selects 1 random enemy to take electro damage together. When a target already inflicted with electric charge is inflicted with it again, the duration is refreshed and they cannot be inflicted with the opposite charge type. Daphne is an Animo support hero who has weapon proficiency with whip swords and assault rifles. Her passives are Azoth Projectile, Argent Lacrima, and Ardent Impulse. Azoth Projectile states that it increases Daphne's ranged weapon trigger probability when she possesses Azoth Projectiles. She has a max capacity of 30 and each ranged attack consumes 1 stack. Argent Lacrima states that when Daphne possesses Azoth Projectiles and her ranged weapon deals damage, targets hit by the ranged weapon are inflicted with 1 DOT or damage over time instance of decay formula, 1 time with damage being based on a certain percentage of her ranged weapon trigger probability. Lastly, Ardent Impulse increases the crit chance for a specified character and their nearby teammates, but this effect only applies when Daphne is deployed as a combat partner. Her skill is a healing skill called Emerald Diffusion, which emits a healing mist around Daphne that provides continuous healing to Daphne and her allies, and also debuffs enemies in the mist, slowing their movements. During her skill activation window, she also gains 2 Azoth projectiles per second while in this state. Her ultimate is a buff skill called Repulsion Synthesis, which heals and applies purification formula to Daphne and nearby teammates. It also temporarily immobilizes enemies and inflicts 1 stack of decay formula on enemies in range up to 3 total stacks. Daphne also gains Azoth projectiles equal to the number of allies and enemies affected up to a maximum of 12. Randy is an electro support character with weapon proficiency in swords and pistols. His passives are Cavalier Composure, Well-Deserved Break, and Holdfast. Cavalier Composure states when Randy successfully grants an Ultra Shield to a teammate, it applies 1 stack that increases their defense based on Randy's defense to them up to 10 stacks. Well-Deserved Break states once a barrier is absorbed damage equal to 70% of Randy's max HP, it consumes sanity to reset the barrier and deals the same barrier deployment damage of Legitimate Slackness 1 time. Holdfast is his combat partner skill, and it increases the defense of the character as well as their nearby allies. His skill is Legitimate Slackness, which is a defensive skill. Upon triggering, it deploys a barrier in front of Randy that deals electro damage to nearby combatants. The barrier consumes sanity over time, during which Randy cannot move or use weapons but is immune to hit stun. Barrier inflicts Overworked Grudge on nearby enemies. When the skill is triggered again, the barrier is then retracted. The barrier blocks frontal projectiles and absorbs their damage and expires once it has absorbed damage equal to 100% of Randy's max HP. Overworked Grudge decreases enemy attack and deals electro damage once every 2 seconds. His ultimate is the damage type Special Gift. Special Gift throws 1 bespoke shield forward, causing impact 1 time when it halts. It then triggers impact once every 3 seconds when it's on the field. Impact deals damage only against a target's shield based on Randy's defense and grants an Ultra Shield based on Randy's defense to teammates within its range. For targets with no shield points, Impact instead paralyzes them. Hellfire is a pyro DPS character whose weapon proficiency is in great swords and grenade launchers. Her passives are Retributive Resolved, Guilty Verdict, and Aether Flame. Retributive Resolve increases Hellfire's max HP and grants her continuous healing over time. Guilty Verdict increases damage dealt to enemies taunted by Hellfire, and her combat partner passive, Aether Flame, increases attack for the character and their nearby pyro teammates. Her skill is Raging Inferno. Raging Inferno is a buff skill that puts Hellfire into the Retribution state. The Retribution state deals pyro damage to all enemies in range once every 2 seconds, and taking damage while in the Retribution state extends the state duration and deals Puncture Retribution pyro damage to nearby enemies once every 2 seconds. Her ultimate is Cage of Despair, which is a damage type ultimate that deals damage to surrounding enemies and taunts them. Psyche is an Animo DPS character with weapon proficiency in polearms and assault rifles. Her passives are Amberlight, Ephemeral is Due, and Mirth Carries. Amberlight states that when dealing crit damage, Psyche gains a buff at random. These buffs include Attack Boost, Skill Damage Boost, and Malaise Boost. It also increases Psyche's damage for each buff she gains up to 12 buffs. Ephemeral is Due states that when using Fluorescent Echolocation, if Psyche's HP percentage is no less than 75%, she gains Ephemeral is Due, which states that when triggering the effect of Moral or Malaise, it regards Psyche's HP as 1%. The effect can only be triggered once every 120 seconds. Mirth Carries is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby Animo allies. Her skill is the damage type Chrysalis Dreamweave. When triggered, Psyche creates 1 phantasm and then flashes forward. The skill can be used anytime without interrupting her current action. When in flamboyant state, the skill instead becomes Photoaxis. A phantasm, once created, will continuously slow down enemies. After 5 seconds, it will deal Animo damage to nearby enemies and then vanish. When a new phantasm is created, the existing one immediately deals Animo damage and vanishes. Photoaxis charges forward in the air and releases 16 ethereal powders. These powders automatically lock onto one enemy, dealing Animo damage and inflicting 1 stack of Powder Stigma up to 12 stacks. When a target inflicted with Powder Stigma takes crit damage from Psyche, 1 stack of Powdered Stigma is consumed to deal extra Animo damage against the target. Her ultimate is the buff type Fluorescent Echolocation, which triggers the flamboyant state and gains the ability to fly. When in this state, she can only use skills and shoot. The state continuously consumes sanity, and it ends when sanity drops to 0 or the ultimate is triggered again. When Psyche's HP percentage is above 15%, flamboyant state consumes HP instead of sanity, and the consumed HP is converted into Ultra Shield at a certain percentage. Fina is a Lumino support character with proficiency in swords and assault rifles. Her passives are Bad Sorcerers Hate Sunlight, To be continued, and Advanced Poker Card Soldiers. Bad Sorcerers Hate Sunlight states that Fina will gain the ability to deal additional lumino damage throughout the battle. When using On a Warm Afternoon, she will gain 3 stacks of Trailweaver Quill. During the Boisterous Tea Party, she will also gain 1 stack of Tailweaver Quill per second, up to 30 stacks. Tailweaver Quill deals additional lumino damage when consumed. To be continued states that when using On a Warm Afternoon, Fina and her teammates' crit chances from weapon attacks are increased according to the number of Tailweaver Quill stacks Fina gains. Advanced Poker Card Soldiers is a passive that's only effective when she's deployed as a combat partner. It increases weapon damage for the character and their nearby teammates mastering in sword or assault rifle. Her skill is called On a Warm Afternoon, and it's a damage type skill that deals lumino damage to enemies within range and decreases their movement speed. Further, when using this skill in Boisterous Tea Party, the damage is increased and the range is increased to match the range of Boisterous Tea Party. Her ultimate is called Let the Tea Party Begin, and it's a support type ultimate. Upon activation, it creates a Boisterous Tea Party zone in front of Fina. The zone continuously consumes sanity and ends when sanity drops to 0 or when the ultimate button is long pressed. While the skill is active, pressing the ultimate button will cycle field effects in a specific order named after guests: Nightingale, Hound, Unicorn, and Butterfly. Triggering the skill when outside of the current zone will relocate the zone to Fina's current location. Each of the guests corresponds to a specific element. Nightingale is Hydro, Hound is Pyro, Unicorn is Electro, and Butterfly is Anemo. When the tea party starts, both Fina and her nearby teammates gain the ability to deal additional damage based on the element of the field currently in play. The zone also deals corresponding elemental damage matching the current field type to enemies within the zone every 2 seconds. Fantasio is an Umbro DPS character with weapon proficiency with great swords and shotguns. His passives are On Stage, Concerto, and Scales of Justice. On Stage states that when in Bestial Fury state, Fantasio's attack is increased based on his max sanity. He gains immersion by using skills with the immersion cap equal to his max sanity. Using Recitativo or Aria gains a certain number of immersion, and when in Bestial Fury state, he gains a continuous immersion per second. When immersion reaches its maximum in Bestial Fury state, Fantasio enters the Bestial Fury Devotion state. While in the Devotion state, he consumes immersion instead of sanity to maintain his form and gains increased movement speed, skill speed, and attack based on his max sanity. When in Devotion state, Fantasio does not gain immersion per second through the Bestial Fury state. Concerto states that when the 3 hits of Furious Claws and Mournful Howl deal damage, there's a chance to inflict 1 Adagio stack on the target. Scales of Justice is his combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby Umbro allies. His skill is the damage skill Recitativo, which deals Umbro damage to enemies in front of him and inflicts 5 stacks of Adagio on them, up to 10 total stacks. The timer of the effect is refreshed with each new stack gained. When in Bestial Fury state, this skill is replaced with Aria. Aria is a skill in which Fantasio dashes forward, dealing Umbro damage to enemies along the path, and gains Presto, which increases skill range and grants immunity to hit stun. His ultimate is the buff type Curtain Up, which causes Fantasio to enter the Bestial Fury state, and continuously consumes sanity. When sanity drops to 0, the state ends. Weapons cannot be used in Bestial state, and melee attacks are replaced with Furious Claws, performing up to 4 consecutive attacks dealing Umbro damage. When used in the air, he performs a plunging attack and deals Umbro damage to enemies within range. Ranged attack is replaced with Mournful Howl, which fires an energy beam dealing Umbro damage. When the 3 hits of Furious Claw and Mournful Howl deal damage, it triggers Duo. When the 4 hits of Furious Claws and the plunging attack deal damage, it triggers Fermata. Duo grants a certain amount of immersion and can be triggered every 0.1 seconds. Fermata increases Fantasio's damage based on the number of Adagio stacks on the enemy target. When there are 10 stacks on the target, it restores Fantasio's sanity and grants a certain amount of immersion. This effect can only be triggered once every attack. Lady Nifl is a Lumino DPS character with a weapon proficiency in katanas and pistols. Her passives are Interwoven Cries, Nightfall, and Crimson Radiance. Interwoven Cries grants Lady Nifl a chance to summon 1 additional lunar hunt when summoning a solar eclipse at the same location, and vice versa. It also notes that the additionally summoned entity will not be enhanced by Misty Sea Requiem. Nightfall states that Solar Eclipse can trigger bonus effects Lumino, while Lunar Hunt can trigger bonus effects Umbro. Crimson Radiance is Lady Nifl's combat partner effect, and it states that it increases the attack for the character and their nearby Lumino teammates. Her skill is Solar Eclipse. Solar Eclipse is a damage-type skill that has two different aspects. The first is Solar Eclipse, which summons Solar Eclipse, which deals lumino damage to all enemies within range when summoned and lowers enemies' attack. Once Solar Eclipse is cast, the skill changes to Lunar Hunt. Casting this ability will summon Lunar Hunt to the field, who will deal Umbro damage to all enemies within range while also reducing their movement speed. Her ultimate is Misty Sea Requiem, which is a buff-type ultimate. Triggering her ultimate makes Lady Nifl enter the Funeral Rite state. If her skill range exceeds 100%, the additional range is converted into skill damage at a certain percentage, and the range will be reduced to and remain at 100% until the Funeral Rite state ends. While in the Funeral Rite state, Lady Nifl's ranged weapons trigger probability is increased. It also removes the sanity cost for summoning Solar Eclipse and Lunar Hunt while granting Solar Eclipse a damage increase and giving Lunar Hunt a CC ability that pulls all targets hit towards the center of the attack range. The Funeral Rite state will end after a certain period of time or after summoning Lunar Hunt and Solar Eclipse a total of 6 times each. Margie is a Pyro DPS character with a weapon proficiency in polearms and shotguns. Her passives are Margie's Recycling Stack, Margie's Pep Song, and Strike. Margie's Recycling Stack states that when she or nearby teammates pick up any item, she gains 1 stack of Jackpot up to 20 stacks. Margie's Pep Song increases the attack of any nearby teammates. Strike is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as any of their nearby allies. Her skill is a DPS type skill called Margie's Treasured Shovel. Using her shovel, Margie attacks enemies within range in front of her, dealing pyro damage and stunning them. When long pressing the skill button, she makes a continuous attack. Her ultimate is Margie's Combustible Bin, which is a damage type ultimate. Once cast, Margie casts 3 combustible bins forward. They immediately explode on collision with enemies or obstacles, dealing AoE pyro damage and consuming a certain number of Jackpot stacks for enhancement. Consuming 3 stacks increases range and damage. Consuming 6 stacks creates a Zealous Zone after the explosion, dealing pyro damage once every 2 seconds to enemies within the zone. Consuming 9 stacks deals pyro damage an additional 2 times after the explosion. Yale and Oliver are Pyro DPS heroes with weapon proficiency with swords and shotguns. His passives are the Rule of Bomb, Bombing Memories, and Aether Flame. The Rules of Bomb states that when a top popper is deployed, if it's no less than 2 meters above the ground, it deals pyro damage to nearby enemies upon landing. Bombing Memories states that each time a top popper is deployed, Yale and Oliver gain 1 stack of Bombing Frenzy up to 3 stacks. Bombing Frenzy increases skill efficiency. Aether Flame is his combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby pyro allies. His skill type is the damage type Top Popper. When triggered, Yale drops a Top Popper bomb, which assumes the form of either Top Popper, Yale's make, or Top Popper, Oliver's make. Upon landing, the bomb explodes after 2 seconds, dealing pyro damage to enemies within a cross-shape... Wait, is he Bomberman? He's Bomberman, isn't he? A cross-shaped area and detonating any other Top Poppers within range. A maximum of 10 poppers can exist at the same time. With Yale's make, dealing damage causes greater stance reduction to the target. The greater the difference between Yale and Oliver's skill range and the skill damage provided by demon wedges, the higher the chance of deploying Yale's make. If the difference is no less than 50%, it's guaranteed to be Yale's make. Oliver's make deals higher damage. The greater the difference between Yale and Oliver's skill damage and skill range provided by demon wedges, the higher the chance of deploying Oliver's make. If the difference is no less than 50, it's guaranteed to be Oliver's make. His ultimate is the damage type Nightmare's Grasp. When triggered, this ultimate generates a nightmare lab around Yale and Oliver. Using the skill again will close the lab. When in the area of Nightmare Lab, enemies' movement speed is reduced. The detonation timer on top poppers within the lab on the ground is stopped, and other top poppers won't detonate them. When it's closed, all top poppers within the lab's range are detonated and the lab explodes, dealing pyro damage to all enemies within range. For each top popper within the range that's detonated, the explosion damage of the Nightmare Lab is increased and sanity is restored for Yale and Oliver. Hilda is a Pyro DPS character whose weapon proficiency is in dual blades and grenade launchers. Her passives are Automatic Sanitizing, Multitasking, and Hellforge. Automatic Sanitizing allows Hilda to carry 2 heavy dirt expellers that automatically shoot nearby enemies once every 3 seconds, dealing pyro damage. Additionally, when Hilda dodges, she reloads her ranged weapon magazine to maximum and gains Elegant Anger for a period of time. Elegant Anger increases the attack speed of Dirt Expellers, the rotation speed of Pyrolytic Cleaning, and the attack speed of ranged weapons. Multitasking gives the Dirt Expellers the chance to fire one additional projectile with the probability equaling 30% plus 20% times Hilda's ranged weapon multi-shot. It also increases the damage of Hyperthermal Purge Jet by the same formula amount. Hellforge is her combat partner passive, and it increases attack for the character and their nearby Pyro allies. Her skill is Pyrolytic Cleaning. Pyrolytic Cleaning is a damage-type skill that commands all Dirt Expellers to continuously revolve around Hilda and fire Hyperthermal Purge Jets, during which the timer for all light Dirt Expellers is paused. Hyperthermal Purge Jets deal pyro damage to enemies, and defeating an enemy has a chance to restore sanity footholds. Her ultimate is Wholehearted Service. Wholehearted Service is a summon-type ultimate that deals pyro damage to surrounding enemies and inflicts Disarm, which permanently disables ranged weapons on them. For each target that's hit, it summons one light Dirt Expeller around Hilda and resets the duration timer for all light Dirt Expellers. Hilda carries 2 heavy Dirt Expellers around. Light and heavy Dirt Expellers target and shoot nearby enemies once every 3 seconds, dealing pyro damage with a maximum of 6 light Dirt Expellers on the field at a time. Kezhou is a Lumino DPS character with weapon proficiency of all types. He is truly the most blessed and beloved of all the devs' creations. His passives are Life Drifts Tides Rearrange, Yet the Drifter Marks the Change, and Crimson Radiance. Life Drifts Tides Rearrange states that Kezhou will initially start with 50 sword intent and 50 string intent, both up to 100 points. Melee weapon damage and trigger probability are increased by a certain percentage based on the sword intent stacks, while ranged weapon damage and trigger probability do the same based on string intent. Further, attacking with a melee converts one stack of sword intent to string intent, and vice versa until one of the intents reaches 100 points and gets maximum benefits. Yet the Drifter Marks the Change states that upon entering Aspect Manifestation state, the current sword intent points are recorded. For a period of time, if the sword intent point value drops below the recorded value, the sword intent value recorded will be applied to his first passive instead, keeping the higher value until the Aspect Manifestation state ends. When it ends, the current string intent points will be recorded doing the same effect, but for ranged weapons instead, ending when Kezhou enters the Aspect Manifestation state. Crimson Radiance is his combat partner passive, and it increases the attack for the character and their nearby Lumino teammates. His skill is Drift of Youth. Drift of Youth is a damage-type skill that deals Lumino damage to enemies within range 3 times and increases Kezhou's ranged weapon attack speed. Further, while he's in Aspect Manifestation state, it increases his melee weapon attack speed, during which he's also immune to hit stun when taking damage. His ultimate is Light Sword Slice Starry Streams. His ultimate is a buff-type ultimate that puts him into the Aspect Manifestation state and summons Edges of Time to rain from the sky, dealing Lumino damage to enemies within range. While in Aspect Manifestation, his melee becomes Phano Sword. When triggering bonus effect using Phano Sword, he generates 1 Phano Plume. While in this state, his ultimate is replaced with a secondary ultimate called Feathers Chase Dust and Dreams. Light Swords consumes less sanity based on Kezhou's sword intent points. At max points, the sanity cost of Light Swords is further reduced by an additional 20 points. Feathers consumes less sanity based on Kezhou's string intent, with max intent points reducing Feathers' sanity cost by 20 points. The Phano Sword inherits all stats from Kezhou's melee weapon and gains an increased attack range. It has normal attack modes for Sword, Greatsword, Polearm, and Dual Blades, and after executing the final hit of Phano Sword, it switches to a random attack mode and launches all Phano Plumes. Kezhou can have a maximum of 7 Phano Plumes at the same time. When launched, each one selects a random enemy to orbit and homes towards them to attack, dealing Lumino damage to any enemies along the path. After attacking the enemy 4 times, the Phano Plume disappears. Targets hit by the Phano Plumes take additional damage equal to a percentage of the DOT bonus effect, Lumino multiplied by Kezhou's melee weapon trigger probability. Feathers Chase Dust and Dreams immediately ends Aspect Manifestation state and deals Lumino damage to enemies in front of Kezhou. Yuming is an electro DPS with a weapon proficiency with polearms and assault rifles. His passives are Soaring Sky High, Thunder Roars, and Gallop Northwestward. Soaring Sky High states when dealing skill damage, inflicts 1 stack of Thunderous Onslaught on the target up to 3 stacks. Thunderous Onslaught reduces electro resistance. Thunder Roars gives Yuming 6 stacks of reverse scales when using Grim Scales. Gallop Northwestward is his combat partner skill, and it increases the morale of the character as well as their nearby allies. His skill is the buff skill Precipitous Thunderfall. After casting, Yuming leaps into the air and his next plunging attack is replaced with Starlight Descent. Using a skill in the Xuanjiao Manifest state grants Yuming 1 reverse scale. When the amount of reverse scale reaches its maximum, Starlight Descent is enhanced to Starstorm Descent. Starlight Descent plunges at high speed, dealing AoE electro damage on impact. The attack is regarded as a melee weapon plunging attack. Using Starlight Descent in the Xuanjiao Manifest state triggers Worm Cell Clouds. Reverse scale persists with a maximum of 6 scales existing at the same time. The scales are removed when the Xuanjiao Manifest state ends. Worm Scale Clouds unleashes 5 strikes of Raging Thunder at the location of the target attacked by Starlight Descent or Starstorm Descent, dealing AoE electro damage with priority given to different target locations. Starstorm Descent consumes all reverse scales to increase skill damage for Yuming and nearby teammates. Then, Yuming plunges at high speed, dealing AoE electro damage on impact. This attack is regarded as a melee weapon plunging attack. Using this skill in the Xuanjiao Manifest state triggers Worm Cell Clouds. His ultimate is the buff type Grimscales. Grimscales deals electro damage to enemies in front and enters into the Xuanjiao Manifest state. Xuanjiao Manifest state grants immunity to hit stun while taking damage. Xuanjiao hovers around Yuming, dealing electro damage to enemies in contact. This can only deal electro damage to the same target every 2 seconds. After Yuming or his nearby teammates consume sanity to use a skill, the next time that they deal skill damage unleashes 1 strike of Fish Dragon Dance at the location of the target, dealing AoE electro damage. This effect can only be triggered once every 2 seconds. Xuanjiao absorbs the damage dealt to Yuming's HP. When the absorbed amount reaches a percentage of Yuming's max HP, the Xuanjiao Manifest state ends. Shilu is an electro DPS character with weapons proficiency in great swords and dual pistols. Her passives are Talisman Coalescence, Mutual Generation, and Divine Retribution. Talisman's Coalescence grants the ability for Shilu to obtain talismans through Celestial Revelation up to 2 talismans. When the number of talismans exceeds the limit, the earliest obtained talisman will be removed. When consuming talisman after using Thunder's Oracle Pearl, Myriad Things Thrive, or Fortune's Clarity, each talisman has a chance to be retained based on Shilu's melee weapon trigger probability. Mutual Generation states that when Shilu or her nearby teammates deal electro skill damage, they gain 1 stack that increases morale up to 12 stacks. Divine Retribution is her combat partner skill, and it increases the attack of the character as well as their nearby electro allies. Her skill is the damage type Celestial Revelation, which has a different effect depending on if the cast button is pressed or held. When pressed, Shilu uses Celestial Revelation Shin, which deals electro damage to enemies within range in front and grants Shilu 1 talisman Shin. When held, she uses Celestial Revelation Shun, dealing electro damage to enemies within range in front and grants Shilu Ultra Shield and 1 talisman Shun. Her ultimate is the damage type ultimate Heaven-Earth Divination. Heaven-Earth Divination states that when Shilu has fewer than 2 talismans, she deals electro damage to enemies within range. When she has 2 talismans, this ultimate is replaced with another ultimate based on the talismans held. When Shilu has 2 talismans Shin, the ultimate is replaced with Thunder's Oracle Pearl, which consumes all talismans and deals electro damage to enemies in a straight line ahead. When Shilu has 1 talisman Shin and 1 talisman Shun, it's replaced with Myriad Things Thrive, which consumes all talismans and deals periodic damage to all enemies within range in front, and then creates a 4 realms aligned field at the location. 4 realms aligned selects several enemies within range every 3 seconds and inflicts them with 1 strike of Shin Shun Convergence, which deals AoE electro damage. When Shilu has 2 talismans Shun, the ultimate is replaced with Fortune's Clarity, which consumes all talismans and deals damage to enemies all around and increases Shilu's skill damage. And that concludes all 22 of the known characters we're aware of from the CBT2. At least the ones I could get information on. There's also this random piece of key art, plus for some reason there's no actual information on the Fox Hunter or the character in the dream. So, yeah. Maybe there's more we're going to find out on the 25th. As always, lots of this is likely subject to change prior to release, and the odds are a lot of these kits have actually changed a little bit at least, which we'll know more about on the 25th for sure, but this video should still be good enough to help you make a choice on who to aim for first. Were there any playstyles that surprised you? Any characters stand out? I'm quite interested in Shilu and her ability to summon a dragon, which isn't mentioned in her kit description, by the way, but it is the method to dealing the damage that it does mention. Also, just from transcribing Kezhou's kit, I feel like he's their golden child. Not only was his kit the largest and contained the most verbs, but his ultimate is a tongue twister. I can't believe that's an accident. Anyways, it's going to be a busy week leading up to the launch on the 28th, and I've got some Pokemon ZA to play and a baby to cuddle, so I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good week, everybody.